And an optimist will find opportunity in every difficulty. And that last piece, the find an opportunity in every difficulty, I think is the characteristics of all great entrepreneurs. And it's certainly the characteristic that I've seen in Steve. I was with Steve a few weeks ago out in LA, and I said, Steve, I'm going to talk about you in this speech, and I'm going to talk about what positive you are and what an optimist you are. And he goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. He's like, I don't really think I'm an optimist. And I was like, well, you are. He says, no, I think I'm a pragmatist. I'm a realist. He's like, he goes, I don't think the world's going to be great. I was like, that's not what I mean by being an optimist. What I'm saying is, you know it's going to not be easy. You know there are going to be problems. The difference is when you see those problems, you view them as opportunities to make yourself better, make your company better, and make your team members better. And to tell you what Green Dot does, they sell these prepaid Visa cards and MasterCards through retailers. And about 2 years into it, I remember I was with Steve in LA, and we were both looking at one another, and we were like, good Lord, if we'd known all the things that we didn't know when we got started about how hard this was going to be, we might never have done it in the first place. Because if you want to sell a financial product through a retailer in 50 states to a consumer, there is an enormous amount of compliance and regulation and legislation that you have to deal with. And I can remember in the beginnings, it was just coming at us at an accelerating rate. Every week there was a Patriot Act issue, or there was a money laundering issue, or there was a money transfer requirement. And I think average people would have just viewed that as too many hurdles. But Steve saw all of these difficulties coming at him, and he has this wonderful ability to put himself in the shoes of another person, even if it's an adversary or a person who's causing him a lot of heartburn. And he said, these are bright people. Let me try to figure out where they're coming from. And he literally took every one of those challenges that came up, and I'm talking about hundreds of things that came up. And he embraced them, and he told his team, he's like, team, we're going to be the first ones to be compliant on this. We're going to be the first ones to integrate this into our product. We're going to be the first one to integrate this into our fraud management systems, because we're going to have the most customer-friendly, regulatory-friendly company in America, and that's going to differentiate us from our competitors. And that's going to be the opportunity for us to be the best. And there's no question that Green Dot has been extremely successful. It's now the leader in the prepaid card industry. They have over 4 million cards outstanding. It's a public company. It's traded on the New York Stock Exchange. It's got a $1 billion plus market cap. And I will give Steve all the credit as a guy who can find the silver lining in something, and as a guy who can make lemonade out of a lemon. That's all my stories on entrepreneurs. I'm going to share one last thing with you, and that's I think you have to have some sense of where you think things are going in the future if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, if you want to be an innovator. And it's not easy. And it doesn't mean you're always going to be right, but you definitely have to have some vision. I want to just share my thoughts on where I think things are going. And they're positive thoughts. And the short version of these thoughts is that I genuinely believe that we are on the cusp of what we can call the golden age of the information technology and telecommunications revolution. And let me explain what I mean by that. I'm influenced by a book I read called Technology Revolutions and Financial Capital. And it was written by an economist by the name of Carlotta Perez. And if you're a believer that history repeats itself, you're going to love this book, because she takes the last 300 years and breaks them down into 5 different technologically driven cycles, if you will. They're all about 60 years in length. It starts with Industrial Revolution and the invention of machinery. Then you go to steam and rail. And then you go into steel and heavy machinery. And then you move into the oil and gas and combustion engine. And then you move into the technology period that we're in now, which is the information technology and telecommunications period. It probably started in 1971 with the invention of the microprocessor. And what's really interesting about all of these cycles is that it's all about the same period, length of time. And they all start with some eruption, some breakthrough in technology, like the microprocessor. And then there's this 30 to 40 year period that she calls the installation period. And this is a period of time when there's great innovation and there's a creation of an entirely new industry. We call it the technology industry today. In the oil and gas stage, it would be transportation and energy. But towards the end of that installation period, capital is flowing in at an irrational rate, and it gets over-exuberant. And what you end up with is a crash, and then there's a period of time called the turning point, which is 10 to 15 years, and then you come out of that, and I'm telling you, this is exactly the same. You can look back at history, and all four of these previous periods is 10 to 15 years of stagnant economic times. There's an enormous amount of new regulation and rules that come out of the crashes that have occurred from the financial capital being irrational for that period of time. And when it all settles, you move into the period that she defines as the deployment period. And this is that golden age period that I'm talking about. And this is a period of time where people begin to build applications for this new modern infrastructure that has been put into place. For example, in the oil and gas period, the infrastructure I'm talking about is roads and ports and airports, common electrical grids. And so companies and infrastructure that we take for granted today, couldn't exist before this. And some of the best examples I can think of are companies like McDonald's. We don't really think about this anymore, but that's an application of a company that was able to be created thanks to the fact that we now had roads and airports. Another example is FedEx or Home Depot. But the real wealth, the real economic benefit in all of these cycles comes in the last 15 to 20 years, as people are able to take that modern infrastructure and create new, more efficient ways of doing existing things: banking, payments, insurance, defense. The other really interesting observation about these cycles is that in that installation period, all of that technology that gets created, it is concentrated geographically on where the wealth gets created and where the innovation occurs. So in the oil and gas period, it'd be Texas or Detroit with transportation and automobiles. And certainly in the period we've been in now, you can look at California, Silicon Valley, and Boston. But what's good news for Georgia in my mind, and what's good news for folks in Columbus, is that the deployment period, that golden age period, that last period where people begin to build applications that can use this modern infrastructure, this mobile network, this internet, cloud computing that didn't exist before, that literally you can go sign up out here in the hallway and get an AT&T phone and have the infrastructure, the information technology infrastructure that a company had to spend a couple $100 million on 15 years ago to have. And that's an amazing gift, an amazing tool that I think entrepreneurs with blank sheets of paper can, in all industries, take and recreate and modernize a product or service around those industries. And that's what I think you're going to see. And I think you're going to be able to see it in a geographically widespread way in the next 15 to 20 years. Not that Silicon Valley and Boston won't still have innovators and entrepreneurs, but the folks who are going to develop those applications are going to be people not that know a lot about technology, because that's become ubiquitous and easy to understand and easy to purchase. They're going to know a lot about a particular industry, and they're going to see a better way to do it now that they have this modern infrastructure. That's all I got. I will just summarize and say, I hope that maybe there's an entrepreneur or two in here that will build the McDonald's or the FedEx of the information technology and telecommunications age. I'm not an over-optimistic kind of guy. I suspect we still have some work to do in the next year or two or three to get through this turning point. But I firmly believe that we are looking at the golden age, the best years to come in the next 15 to 20 years. So thank you very much for letting me speak with you here this morning.